I thought it would be nice to do a question and answer session today based on the questions I've been getting in the anonymous submission form. And first, I think just wanted to thank all the people who have submitted. I have gotten a lot of well wishes from friends who I have met, friends who I have not personally met, but I have seen your name and your tile in the KBV Zoom quite often. And I also appreciate the critiques I've received, which really help shape and hone how I talk about the Dhamma so that it can be the clearest it can possibly be. So thank you to everybody. I did want to note that it seemed like some people wrote to me wishing for a direct response. And unless you wrote your email address in the submission, I don't know how to respond to you. So I actually changed the question form so that there's a spot specifically asking if you do want a direct response, please leave your email address. If you do not leave your name, if you do not leave your email address, then it would still be anonymous. So choose what degree of privacy you want for yourself. Okay. So the first question I'd like to address is somebody asked in response to a video I made entitled "What Flavor is Your Dukkha?" And that one is about like really sitting with recent memories and holding our recent memories of our suffering, and perhaps by getting so intimately familiar with them, maybe we can discover some underlying current that runs through all these recent memories of suffering. And by discovering that current, so for me at one point in my life, it was impatience. Discovering that the thing that was really causing suffering about all these different painful experiences was actually impatience. By knowing the name, knowing the specific flavor and tone of that suffering, then it really helped me be able to face it better, recognize it faster, apply the antidote that I needed the most to that impatience. And that really helped me. And as always, again, I always want to say this, I still get impatient sometimes, all right? But it is fleeting, it is empty, it doesn't haunt me the way that it used to back when it was the underlying current of all my instances of suffering. Okay, so in this video, I was really inviting people to sit with your own suffering, and maybe you can find that underlying current for yourself. And I hope that it is as effective for you as it was for me. Someone wrote in response to this video asking if I could please identify their main flavor of their dukkha. And I think this is because in the video, I said that when I was going through like learning how to identify that main flavor of my own suffering, one really helpful stepping stone was to sit with the suffering of my closest loved ones, like my family members, my closest friends, and I could hold their suffering and identify their main flavor of dukkha. And then by understanding how to do it for my friends and my loved ones, then that's when I turned that tool toward myself, used it for myself in my own practice. And this person who wrote into me requesting this, I can't do that for you because I don't know you intimately. I don't know your suffering intimately. And only by really knowing and holding our arms open to that suffering can we possibly identify what is that underlying current through all of it. And I think that for a deep practitioner, a fully awakened person, it's not that they have zero suffering. It's not that they have zero unpleasant memories. It's that they know their suffering so intimately that they know it is impermanent. They know it is empty, not self. They know it is just unpleasant feeling arising, sustaining for however long it sustains, and then diminishing. You'll have to find that answer for yourself. And I am very, very excited for you. Because if it is half as effective for you as it is for me, then it will be very, very fruitful practice. All right, next question. Somebody asked, I often refer to the idea in my talks of letting go of like outside expectation, outside circumstances, outside results, other outcomes, and really just focusing on practicing to the best of our ability. And somebody asked, how do you know when you're doing your best? And that's a great question. First, I want to talk about what is not doing our best. And I want to talk about this because I have a corporate day job and I see people doing this other version of their best all the time. And that's just giving, 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 giving until they are past burnout, they are past depletion, they are ready to flip a table. Or they actually do, whether literally or metaphorically, I don't know. But that is what some people conceive of as doing their best, is just giving as much as they possibly can past their ability, past their capacity. That is not what I think of. No, 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 no. That is not what I think of as doing your best. When I think of doing my best, I think of going as far as I can without causing harm to myself. So, for example, when I'm partnering with someone at work or in any kind of relationship, not just at work, I'll give, I'll listen, I'll be present. And then there comes a point where especially as an extreme introvert, there comes a point in this interaction where, like, as we talk, my energy levels are going down. And then there comes a point where I can feel this threshold being crossed inside me in my own energy levels. And then that is the time to excuse myself as politely and quickly as possible. Yeah, doing as much as I can without causing harm to myself. And another way of approaching this is, okay, so let's say I ask you to raise your hand, right? So for most people, the thought process, and it's really quick, so it requires some mindfulness to be able to identify this and to see this unfold for ourselves. But for most people, if I ask you to please raise your hand, then you would visualize what that would look like externally, or what that would feel like based on probably most people grew up raising their hand in class. So you know what this looks like, you know what this feels like, and you bring your body, you tell your body to match that picture. Versus there's this other way of doing things. And this is one reason why I love teaching Qigong on retreats, because I do this exercise with people. And this is one reason why practicing Qigong can be really helpful to all of practice, not just movement practice. It is movement practice that supports all of spiritual practice in my eyes. But anyway, so in Qigong, I will often run people through this exercise where I tell them what the form is going to look like. So, for example, raising your hand. But instead of just going into it, I invite people to really experience the intention of it, like planting a seed in your lower belly. The intention begins in the lower belly. The intention sprouts and grows up the spine, up the chest. It grows, the intention of it grows through the shoulder. The shoulder activates, and then the upper arm activates, elbow activates, lower arm, forearm activates, hands, fingers, knuckle by knuckle activate. And now we have raised our hand. Okay. So there's this other way of doing things where it doesn't start with the external image. It starts with the intention in the belly, and the intention grows slowly of its own accord. You know, because the intention is there, it's going to spread outward through all the limbs, down every finger, knuckle by knuckle, And it is only a matter of time before that intention is fully realized. Okay, so when I do this in Qigong at retreats, I tell people right now we're using this way of seeding the intention and trusting the outcome will unfold with a physical motion, but we can apply this to all of life, to every intention. And I want to bring this up because if we seed goodness, wisdom, loving kindness, any virtue, or even if we just cut right to the chase, cut right to the core of things, and just seed my intention to practice well into my lower belly. And then we can experience this way of that intention of practicing well, taking root, sprouting, spreading through our whole body, spreading through every action, everything we say, every thought, until good practice imbues every cell, every molecule of the world around us. That would be doing our best. And then you don't have to rely on any outside measure to know you're doing your best. You can just feel in your belly and know it's there. Know it's in your whole body, that good practice. And know it's imbued in every thought, every speech, every action. And I think that would be very good practice. That would be a very good life indeed. I talked about seeing my past lives recently, and oftentimes people want to know how they can see their own past lives. And there's two ways that I know of, two reliable ways. Okay, so one is to go into meditation. I would recommend, for me, the way I think about how deep to go is about fourth jhana, because if you go too deep, then the mind is so still that you can't even experience intuitive images like that. And then if it's not deep enough, then you won't be able to access that deep part of your brain, deep part of your mind. So right about fourth jhana. So if it helps, you can try this on a retreat when people's minds are just more still. And as you go in, just hold in the back of your mind, what was I before? What have I been in previous births? And then just open the mind to whatever images want to appear. So the tricky thing is, a lot of times people have this, especially in the West, especially in the modern Western world, people have this critical voice that might be standing on the side, like, are you kidding? You think this is going to work? Aren't you embarrassed? So that voice really needs to not be there in order for the intuitive images to arise. And one thing you can try is to bring your energy to the back of the mind, the base of the skull. And this is another reason why I love teaching Qigong on retreats, is because as you get familiar with the energy as it moves around your body, especially as it's guided by physical movements, then as you become more and more fluent, you can just move it with your mind, move it to the back of the mind. I will say for some people, it helps to move the energy right between the eyebrows to the third eye, and that can also help stimulate intuitive power. And since I brought that up, I want to distinguish, like, this fleshy front third of the brain is where all my energy goes when I'm using the analytical mind. Like, Kyle does my taxes now, but back when I did my own taxes, like all my energy would concentrate right to this front quarter of my brain. Same with when I'm compiling a shopping list or just doing a lot of math. It just all concentrates right here. So if you feel your energy in this fleshy front quarter of your mind, bring it back. That's going to help you dive into that deep, deep part of the mind that you would need to access in order to see your past lives. So I know these two areas of the head are very close, but there is an ocean of difference between the third eye, between the eyebrows, and this fleshy front quarter of the brain. So that's one way, is to go into meditation, use your energy tools if you are fluent with them. Another way to think of how to access the part of the mind that you would need to access in order to see your past lives is some people become really concerned that they are making everything up and that they're not really seeing their past lives, but they're just like sitting there making up a story about who they were. But actually, let's try this experiment. Let's say I ask you to make up a story about a fork and a knife. Okay, so for me, when I think of that energy of making something up from nothing, my energy again concentrates in this front quarter of my mind, of my brain. And then if I ask you, what do you think it would feel like to listen to a small child whisper in your ear a story about a fork and a knife? So for me, then my energy really pulls back and becomes spacious, expansive. My energy becomes grounded, calm, quiet, and present. And then it's not like I have to put any effort into making something up, building a plot, building a narrative, blah, blah, blah. I really just feel like I am listening to someone whisper in my ear. A wonderful, whimsical fairy tale. So it feels more like that. Okay, so first method is meditation. Second method is to find someone who can facilitate spiritual hypnosis. And I have a fun surprise for everyone. This is something that I used to do. I don't offer this service anymore, but there is someone in the KBV community who I have passed all my notes on how to do this to that person. And they asked not to be named on this public YouTube video. But if you want to know who it is and connect with them about potentially having them do this for you, you can submit your name and just tell me, submit your email address on the anonymous question form that I'm going to leave in the video description, and then you can reach out to them directly. She is very good, kind, warm person. She has a lot of experience tending to people's minds and hearts. And I don't have any more questions about my past lives. In fact, I was instructed not to look anymore. But if I did have more questions about my past lives, she is the person I would go to. She is the only person I would go to. And that is why I feel comfortable passing her name on to anybody who wants to try it for yourself. And a remote option is possible. You can do this through Zoom or any video conferencing tool. So have fun. And the last question for tonight, for today, is somebody very kindly offered me congratulations on my 1 full year of giving formal Dhamma talks as of August 2nd, and asked if I had any reflections from first year of teaching in this way. And I have learned a lot boy, I have a lot of reflections, but I think the one that floats to the top of my mind right now is, I've often spoken about how there's no perfect teacher, and even the most wise and charismatic teacher, when you really go into the audience, I think it's easy to listen to their biggest fans. And I will say, like, when we went to Thailand, I was the Kruba Ajah's biggest fan. And I came back and I was like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. And it was totally changed my life, changed my practice, which it did. And not everybody in the group felt that way. And I've said this before in my talks, but I would say about, like, there's this 10% tax, like at least 10% of any group, even for the wisest and most charismatic teacher, is just not going to get it for some reason. Like, either they don't understand or they just don't vibe with the dynamic. They don't like the way the group is structured, or they are just like completely turned off and actively dislike it in some way. And that is a pattern I've seen again and again. That is a pattern I trust. And no one is exempt from that pattern, to my knowledge, myself included. And that's been a really humbling, sweet experience to be on the receiving end of that 10% tax. And I think one of the most distinct examples is that, okay, so I'm 36 years old. And usually, when people guess how old I am, they guess that I am in my mid to late 20s. And in fact, some people have responded in very funny ways when I tell them I'm 36. They've almost fallen out of their chairs. It's been very amusing for me. But anyway, I compared to, at least compared to the other teachers at the Sacramento Dharma Center, I'm quite young, and I appear even younger than I am. So I've gotten such interesting feedback about my perceived youth. I've had someone just come up right to my face and praise my youth and say how inspiring they find it that, I'm giving whatever talk I just gave, and that I am so young. It feels so silly to say, because this is all just, as Aya Sanchuzaka would say, this is all just packaging. But it creates such strong reactions in people. Okay, so one person came up and said, wow, so amazing. Praise, praise, praise your youth. But then on the other hand, there are some people who are just utterly confused and turned off by my perceived youth. Because I went to this event at the Sacramento Dharma Center, and there was someone there who had heard me speak before, and he was really excited to introduce me to his wife. So he brought me over, and he was like, oh my gosh, this is Grace. Grace is the teacher. And she just stared at me and was like, do not compute. Like, what do you teach? Elementary school? And her husband seemed embarrassed by this and was like, no, 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 Grace teaches here. Grace teaches the Dharma. And she was like, so resisted this idea. Like, she just looked at this person in front of her and was like, no, you're too young. You teach kindergarten, first grade. Pretty amusing. Yeah, it's all just packaging. And there's no packaging that agrees with everybody. No way. Some people will look at me and love the fact that I am a femme or a person of color, or really respond to the fact that I put that I'm queer and non-binary and autistic, child of immigrants, grandchild of refugees in my bio. And a lot of people will look at those exact same things and not want to approach. Disengage, disengage, disengage. And that's just the way it is. I don't think anybody is exempt from being judged by their packaging. And it's also liberating. It's so freeing to just embrace that fact and let people think what they want. And I will say, I think the Buddha had this rule of having people only teach when they're invited for many reasons, all of which are so brilliant. And I think that was just a complete stroke of genius to have that role. But one way I practice with that rule, and I know it's for like monastics, but I 100% take that rule for myself and practice that rule for myself. And one reason is because it's just so freeing. It's so freeing to just sit back and leave it up to the world. Like if you want to hear what I have to say, then I will say it, and if not, then I will just be hanging out at home, being with the people I love, living this quiet, simple, happy life where, of course, there are days where I'm grumpy and irritated, but on the whole, pretty darn happy, pretty darn content. And it's up to the world. And I feel so free to say that. All right, that is all for now. And as always, may we practice well.